work out how to make this slightly bigger. So,
Susan, just before you do move on, yes. Sorry, just to interrupt, those who do have their hands up, and if you're feeling like let's rather go on and we come back, just please jot down your questions that you have, either in the chat or on your side, that we can come back to it when we have time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Grace. I really am very sorry, but it's like we've got limited time and we've got quite a big paper to get through. And anything you write in the chat, I will pick up, because I'm going to go through the chat afterwards, and anything that's there, I will add to the report as well. So I will pick up extra comments, particularly things like language issues and things like that, which are very, very important. Okay, so I think 2.1 to 2.4 is fairly straightforward. I would assume in 2.2 that they will accept wherever you put the boundary, whether you put it on the 20, include the 20, or whether you include the 25. I remember a few years ago they didn't worry about it. All they were interested in was, did the learner take the 20 and the 25? And then question 2.5. I'm not sure if this is what they wanted. I'm not sure if this is how it's going to be marked, but this is our attempt at what we think is going to happen. I've taken the ogive and I've drawn what I think is going to be the new ogive. We've got to remember that the people who spend a small percentage of their salary on fuel are going to spend more, but not significantly more. Whereas the people who spend a large percentage of their salary, they're going to spend a much greater percentage of their salary. And there's so many variables in this. You don't know what a person's earning. You don't know how many liters of fuel they're using. You don't know how far they're traveling. You don't know anything with it. So I think this is what is going to happen, but I'm very happy for somebody to tell us that no, it's not. So I think it is. The graph will be stretched to the right with a cumulative frequency still at 60. I use the word stretch because the bottom points are not going to be pulled as much as the top points. But I think if a learner were to say the graph will move to the right, I think that's also fine. I think you can also say that the graph will lie below the original graph. However, it's still got to end with a cumulative frequency at 60. And then I just added there, notice the lower bound might change to 10, because if the 5 people in the boundary 5 to 10 all spend about 9.5% of their salary on fuel, they're going to shift up into the next category, and you might well need a new interval for 35 to 40. So I think this was an awkward question. I think it was a question where I'm not entirely sure what they wanted us to ask and to answer. So I'd be interested to hear some comments about it. As far as the cognitive levels are concerned, we put the first 2 in knowledge and the next 2 in routine. I don't mind the difference between level 1 and level 2. It's just, I don't mind, as long as we've got enough of the paper that is accessible. And then question 2.5 we put into level 4. And I, for one, will be very interested to see what the official memo says for that. Any comments from anyone, either talk or in the chat?
Hi, Sue, it's Renata.
Yes,
just on that last question, there was just so much kind of arguing that went through my head about is a rich person now going to spend a bigger part of their because it's a percentage of their salary? Are they spending a smaller part of? They might be driving more, but it's a smaller part of their or percentage of their salary. The person who's poor might be spending less actual on petrol, but it's a bigger part. There was so much thinking going on there for 2 marks. I found it really, and I still don't know what the answer is. The only thing that I thought was fairly certain is that it will move to the right, but anything more than that, I think is very unrealistic for the kids to figure out in that amount of time.
I agree. And, 2 marks for saying just it will move to the right. So
doesn't make sense.
That worries me as well, because is it going to be all or nothing? And I see there are many comments, it wasn't clear how much detail to give. So what were they testing? So I think it really is a confusing question indeed. And as I say, I would love to see the official memo because I don't know what they're going to say. And here again, we've got a language problem. The question is wordy. Never mind the question is wordy. There are just too many variables to work out what is happening. So we will definitely take note of that. Okay, thank you very much. So that's the data. Yes. Was that someone who wanted to speak?
Yes, I think we should flag that question as an unfair question, really.
Okay, we will definitely include in the report that nobody's entirely sure what they were asking. And yeah, so we will definitely include that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, if we move on to question 3, let me show you the memo here. So I think question 3 started very nicely. 3.1.1, fine. 3.12, 3.13, 3.14, very nice. Just get into the paper, not bad at all. Question 3.2, to find the equation of the straight line CD, also no problem at all. Okay, and then if I go onto the second page, sorry, I'm just trying to get used to a different laptop. In 3.3.1, there are 2 ways I think you can do it, and I don't know which is the nicer of the 2 ways. I don't know which is, I think they both have their merits. Let me just make it slightly smaller. So one way you can do it is you can get the gradient of AC, which gives you angle AFR, and then you work in triangle AFR and use the exterior angle, and then use alternate angles to get the angle that they wanted. Alternatively, you can use a mini set of axes at angle C and get theta, because you know the gradient of AC because they gave you the line. You know the gradient of CD because you've just worked out the equation. So you can get angle theta, you can get angle beta, and therefore you can get the angle you want. So both of them will give you those answers. Incidentally, if you round off in the process, you end up getting 68,62 degrees, but I don't think there's going to be any problem with that whatsoever, because I reckon both will, I'm fairly convinced that both of those will be marked correctly. They won't penalize if you round it off or if you kept the full figures. And then we get on to question 3.3.2. Now, I was very interested to see that this question is very similar to the question in paper 1, where they asked them to find the area of the triangle. And one does wonder whether somebody checks both of these papers to see, and there's another incident later on where I think it's also very similar to paper 1. And I wonder if there is a check between both papers to see, you know, are we asking the same thing in 2 papers? There are many, many, many different ways of doing this. And all I can say to those of you who are marking paper 2, good luck, because you're going to be knowing exactly what's going on in this quadrilateral by the time you've finished. Every method has to have the coordinates of P. So you've got the equation of CD. So to work out the coordinates of P, very easy. And then what we've done is we've shown in the memo 2 different ways. And then I've got pictures for another 3 ways. And I am convinced there are probably a good another, I don't know how many ways of doing it. So one method is to take triangle FPC. You know the equation of AC, so you can get the coordinate of F quite happily because it's the x-intercept. So you take the area of triangle FPC minus the area of triangle FOS. So there's one way. Second way, you can drop a perpendicular onto the x-axis and you can get the area of a trapezium plus the area of a triangle. And you can do it that way. And we've got that solution as well. These other diagrams are just showing you other ways. You could draw OC and get the area of triangle POC because you've got the base PO and you've got the perpendicular height. You've got the base OS and you've got the perpendicular from C to the y-axis. So there's your next way of doing it. You can then take PC and extend it to Q and get the area of triangle POQ using half base times height minus the area of triangle OQC using half base times height. Another way you can do it is you can draw PS and get the area of triangle PCS, which is not very elegant because you've got to work out the length of PC using the distance formula, the length of SC using the distance formula, and then you can use angle C, which you've just worked out, use the area rule to get that area, and then the area of right angle triangle POS. And I think, as with paper 1 as well, the fact that they asked you in the question 3.3 is one question: calculate the size of angle DCA and the area of the quadrilateral. So it makes you think the two questions are related to each other. However, if you do use angle DCA, it's probably the least elegant way of doing it. So I don't know. So there are plenty of ways. As I say, I'm convinced there are many, many more ways. But there you've got those. And paper 1 as well, if I remember correctly, they asked you to find the length of AB. And then using that, it also didn't give you the most elegant solution. So, yeah, if I have a look at the levels, we have the following. We've put the first 5 questions all into level 2. So the gradient, the size of the angle, the coordinates, and the equation of the line. 3.3.1, finding the size of angle DCA, they get asked that many times, but it is still quite difficult for them, so we've put that in level 3. And then 3.3.2, we did put into level 4, but just tell me, now's the time to tell me, do you want to change something? Do you not want to change something? So let me know. So either come off your mic or, yeah, Neil, I see you've got a hand up.
Hi, Sue. Sorry, my mic's coming off. I'm not sure if it's off. Okay, right.
Yes, talking.
Sue, I'm really worried about this, and I know I disagreed with Jenny on Tuesday, because we say it takes time to see the quickest method. No, it doesn't take a whole bunch of people time to see the quickest method. Many people will just see 2 triangles, all right, and do it. Then they look at the mark allocation and see 5 marks and assume that they are wrong, and then go back and try to find where the mistake is, when they have done what is obviously the case. So I don't agree that it should be, because there is a difficult method, I still don't think we should be allocating marks for it. All right, we should allocate marks to the simplest method.
I agree. I would probably have given it 4 marks. I would have given 1 mark for the coordinate of P, or the value of -3, or the distance OP being 3, whatever, because they did have to work that out. Every one of the methods that we found, you had to work out the area of 2 things. So I would give 1 mark for each of those, and I'd give 1 mark for the answer. So I would give 4, but I don't think, I wouldn't have given 5. So we can definitely make a comment about that. And I agree with you. The problem is that if you don't see the quickest method when you're testing, when you're the examiner, then maybe that's why it was 5 marks. I don't know. So we'll see how they allocate the marks in the memo. Okay, thanks, Neil. Diagram is a bit messy in a few places. The strokes indicating, yeah. Okay, we will definitely take note of that. Okay. Can we move off that question? Let's go on to question number 4. Yes.
Ms. Chartelie, just one question.
Yes. Yeah.
Question 3.3.1.
Yes.
You could also use the formula to calculate the angle by using the formula tan theta is equal to M1 minus M2 plus M1 times M2. That formula.
Absolutely. If
I brought it up in a sub-examiner. I brought it up amongst the people as well. I see they omit it all the time.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, and you're my son's teacher.
That's right, yes, hello. And I would hope that they would put that into the memo, the official memo, certainly as an alternative, but I think most of us don't teach that. But if you do, then it definitely must be accepted. And then they've just got to remember which one's M1 and M2 so that you don't get...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think because you've got to remember which way around it is. So, yeah. Okay, thanks for this other comment about space and so on. The answer book, yes, I agree with you. In fact, I think there are a number of places in the answer book where the space wasn't sufficient. So we will definitely be mentioning that. Okay, if I move on to question number 4. Let me show you the memo quickly. Okay, I think 4.1, fairly straightforward. 4.2.1, straightforward. 4.2.2, straightforward. The first question that I just had a little bit of I wasn't too sure about, is the use of the word secant. in grade 8, you teach the terminology of a circle, and you do all sorts of things with radius, circumference, diameter, tangent, and so on. And yes, one does mention a secant, I think, but do we ever use the word again? And do matrics know what a secant is? And I just wonder whether it wouldn't have been better, particularly for second language, if okay, will this equation cut the circle twice? It's not testing anything different. It's just saying to them, okay, it's not taking, what is a secant? If you look in Afrikaans, it says it's a snay lane, which I think is a lot easier to understand because it's a cutting line. So it's a line that cuts. But maybe they could have just said, it's going to cut the circle twice. You still had to realize, which is exactly what they're examining. They're saying to you, where's this other line? You've got to get the parallel tangent. You've got to get the equation of that tangent and realize that k lies between minus 28/3 and 22/3. So I see their comments about revised in grade 11. Oops, I never did that. But yes, okay, thank you. But I still wonder whether it wouldn't have been better to have put in that it does cut the circle twice. I don't think it changes the nature of the question at all, because I think what you're testing is, do they understand that it will be a parallel tangent and then you have it between the things. Okay, the comments seem to be mixed between whether it should be secant or should not be secant. We'll just make a comment about it. And then question 4.4. You had no idea where A and B were, but I must say what I quite liked about the paper this year is it said to you, are not shown on the diagram, which I think did make certain for the learners that they knew, okay, I'm not hunting for A and B and missing something on my paper. I've got to think where A and B are. So you needed Pythagoras to be able to get the length of AB. What worried me slightly in this question is that 4.4.1 was 2 marks and 4.4 was 4 marks. I personally would have preferred 3 marks and 3 marks, because how do you know you can use Pythagoras? Do you not need to say that you've got a right angle because the tangent is perpendicular to the radius? And there are times when they say to you, you've got to give all reasons in analytical geometry. And yet here, I don't think there's going to be a mark allocation for a reason at all. So I would have preferred 3 marks, but that's fine. And at least they gave you the equation of AB, which meant that you could then work with something. Now, here's my second question, which I think is very similar to paper 1. Again, you've got to minimize something that's under a square root. And if they hadn't realized in paper 1 that the minimum of the square root of something, you've just got to take the minimum of what's underneath, then they stuck with this one as well. However, I think this one is a little easier in that it's a quadratic and it's not a 4th degree. So you've got a number of choices. You can take the derivative, and we've got a whole lot of choices here. You can take the derivative equal to 0 because you want the minimum, and you get what t is equal to. I'm sorry, it's the new laptop. Sorry, I'm just going to find a way of getting back to my other page. My humble apologies. Okay, I will get there. Okay, so take the derivative, make it equal to 0, and then substitute in to get the minimum length of AB. You could also, because it's a quadratic, you could have used x equals minus b over 2a to get your axis of symmetry, and then substitute in to get the length of AB. You could also have completed the square and realized that, again, because it's a quadratic, the minimum of what's underneath is 7, which means the minimum of the whole thing is root 7. So a number of different ways of doing it. And I'm sure there might well be other ways. I don't know. I would not change into the available to all the learners. However, your further studies learners might well be doing chain rule. But I think there was a problem. It spent so long making sense of the question before we actually started. Yeah, interesting comment. Okay, if we have a look at cognitive levels with question 4, what we put in there was we said the first 3 were all level 2. They were straightforward, typical questions. And then 4.3 we put into level 4. I don't know if you want to decide if you want to move that. And then 4.4, we put both of them into level 4 because it was completely unseen. A and B are not shown on the diagram. You've got to work out where they are. 4.4.2, maybe one can argue because they were given the length of AB, that it's easier to find the minimum length. So let's open it up. Comments, or if you want to into the chat, or if you want to come on your mic, please give me comments about question 4. Yeah, 441 concept of optimizing and the root was also in paper 1. Yes. Yeah, go for it.
Yes, I'm a bit worried about 4.4.
Yes.
Because if you just say point A, T is to T and B are not shown, that point A, T is to 2 can still be interpreted as a point in any of the quadrants. Anyway, even if T and T are positive, it really doesn't tell that the values of T are in the first quadrant.
It doesn't tell you where it is. However, because they've told you that A is the point TT, you know it lies on the line y equals x, which means your point A is either going to be in the first quadrant on the line y equals x, or it's going to be in the third quadrant on the line y equals x. And it doesn't matter where you draw it in that diagram, and it also doesn't matter which way you take it to the circle, because you've got equal tangents from the same point. So it's, yeah, it is difficult, but that's why I think it...
From both angles.
Sorry, what was that?
Did you also do it from the negative T is to negative T, from the third quadrant?
When I did it, I think I did have it in the third quadrant, but then I also realized that it could have been anywhere because I drew a number of different options for A and realized it could be anywhere on that line y equals x.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see their comments here. 4.3 is level 3, not level 4. Okay. Right, should we take a vote? Okay, can I ask if you think, so we're talking about question 4.3, so that's the question with the secant. If you think it should be level 3, please can you put your hand up? So question 4.3, if you think it should be level 3, please put your hand up. Yeah, I see hands going up at the moment. Okay, just remember, if you don't put your, I'm going to ask for level 4 now, but if you don't put your hand up, then we don't know what you're wanting. Okay, can I ask all those hands to go down, please? Otherwise, you're going to be counted in the next lot. Okay, the hands are not going down very well. Okay, brilliant. They're going down nicely. Okay, if you think it should be level 4, please put hands up. So if you think question 4.3 should be level 4, please put hands up. Okay, we're getting more hands. Okay, comments about commas needing in, I will pick that up at a later stage. Okay, thank you. If you can put hands down. I think from counting the hands, I think we're going to leave it in level 4. Just remember that this is representative of everyone. So when we do take a vote, I do need to take the higher number of people who have voted. 4.4, if a learner could not find 4.2.2, then they couldn't attempt 4.4 to find the equation of KL. Okay, I need to think about that one. At the moment, I can't think about that, but I will pick up everything that's in the chat. I will pick up and bring in if there's anything. Okay, if we can pop hands down, please. Okay, so if there are no more comments on that one, I'd like to have a look at question 5, please.
I have one more comment, madam.
Yes, go for it, yes.
More especially in 4.4.2. It's a comment that I've done in paper 1. Let's think of when you find the minimum of something under the square root, you take that thing that is under the square root. I'm worried if there is a general rule in mathematics that justifies that. Because now I understand a bit in paper 1, maybe then you can get away with doing dodgy mathematics. But now if it appears again, it gives me an impression that what type of mathematics are we teaching now? Because it's like we're teaching dodgy mathematics, of which I do not know any rule that says if you have to find a minimum, you have to do it in that way. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a chain rule and all that stuff at varsity. Everything that has got a square root or something, the power that is fishy, we would just take the derivative of something underneath that. So it's my concern.
I hear you. It's something that I don't think I ever would have taught to my learners. But if you think of the parabola y equals x squared, and you get the inverse, which is in our syllabus, you get that y equals root x. So, and if you think about what that graph looks like, as x increases, so y increases. So as what is under the square root increases, so the root of that thing increases. But I don't think I would ever have taught my learners that either. And I agree with you. I have a feeling, but my memory might be failing me, that when the new syllabus came in and they brought out an exemplar paper in 2014, I think there was a question in there, where there was a root and they had to minimize what was underneath the root. And I remember one of the boys I taught at the time said, but how do you know that you can just do that? But I agree with you, and we will put it into the report. So thank you very much for that. Okay, I'd like to... Yes.
May I comment on that?
Yes.
I don't think there is a problem with that question, ma'am, because it is all about interpretation of the parabola. Once you know that the word maximum or minimum is to do with the turning point, it's always x is equal to minus b over 2a. That's what they must calculate and then substitute to get the y value and then square root, which is not a problem at all.
Yeah.
Again, I think I saw a similar question in is it 2016 grade 11 paper, 2016 or 2017 grade 11 paper.
Similar kind of thing there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's 2018 November paper 1. Yeah,
okay.
I still remember that one.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. We're going to get on to question 5. And I just want to read something before we start with it, please. What happened in paper 2 was terrible. The impact on the mistake in question 5.1 cannot be underestimated. It caused untold stress on learners and probably derailed many of them from that point on. There are appropriate channels for you to send comments. However, for the purpose of this review, I would like us not to focus on this. We owe it to the learners to make sure that we submit comments on the entire paper that can be used at the memo meetings. There's no talk of rewriting this paper, and the rest of the paper needs to be marked, so we need to give advice where it is needed. We need to trust the process with question 5.1. The department is aware of the problem, and I'm confident that there will be a full investigation. I'm absolutely certain that the majority of our learners will not be adversely affected. The marks will be compared to previous years, so there is no problem there. I do worry, though, about individuals who were thrown by this. We teach our learners not to be rattled by questions they can't do. They need to leave them out and come back to them. However, those questions are usually at the end of a section, not the very first trig problem. I personally doubted my ability, and I honestly wondered if it was time for me to retire completely, as I couldn't understand what I was missing. I cannot remember a time when there was last an error in a final paper. Wording issues, yes, but an outright error, I don't remember that. So I doubted myself instead of the question. And I think for many learners, they would have done that too. I feel very sorry for the examiners and moderators. We have all made mistakes in exams that we have set at schools, which I certainly have. But to have made this mistake in such a high-stake exam must be devastating for them. I ask that you trust the process. Let the department, along with the examiners and external moderators, figure out how they are going to compensate the learners. And I would like to wish our chief markers and internal moderators strength as they fight for our learners in the memo discussions. Once we have finished the rest of the paper, I am going to open discussion on question 5.1, but I want to ask now that we keep going with the rest of the paper. Okay, so if I take the memo here, question 5.2, I thought was fairly straightforward. I just have two comments. One is, they said you determine the value of the following expression, which is fine. So they obviously wanted the learners to realize there's going to be no trig left in this whatsoever. There's going to be a number. But nowhere was there any indication of the fact that there are certain values of theta that cannot be included, because then you get a denominator of 0. I do think it would have made the question a lot more difficult had it been had they put there that theta cannot equal the values and so on. So I think it would have been more difficult, but there is a little bit of a problem with that. And then I'm curious to know how they're going to mark it. Every single one of those trig functions ended up negative. If a learner did not think of any of those negatives, are they going to lose 3 of the 5 marks, 1 for each of the negatives that is missed out? I don't know what the right or wrong answer is. I think it's just something that it would be nice if they would consider it when they do the memo discussion, because there might well be learners who forget that they do need to look at whether it's plus or minus. So 5.2 came out very nicely to a quarter. 5.3, general solution. One bracket is 0, so you get one of the solutions there, having to make it into tan. The other bracket could be 0, and because it's sine, you're getting 2 solutions, both in the first and second quadrants. And then, of course, you've still got to remember to divide by 2. So there's question 5.3. Okay, if I can get on to the next page. Question 5.4. There's our answer there. I thought it had to do, you've got to do a little bit of manipulation, realizing that you don't want causes in there anymore. You only want sines. And then 5.4.2, you had to work out what x and y were so that you could use the formula. And then 5.5.1, I thought worked out very nicely. It did say rewrite it as a single trig ratio. So is a single trig ratio, what happens if I get everything with sines? So because I could make that bracket into 1 minus 2 sine squared, and then I could maybe do some manipulation and get just everything with sines. Does it have to be as succinct as that in? I don't know. I think one needs to see what solutions one comes up with and then see what happens there. And then 5.5.2, only worth 1 mark, a fair amount of thinking you had to do, and x is 67.5 degrees. So there's the memo for question 5. If I go on to the cognitive levels, we have left out in our analysis question 5.1, and you will notice at the top that it's all worked out of 143 marks, so we can see what the balance is on the marks that the learners could do. What we have done, and rightly or wrongly, and this is where I need advice from you, we've put 5.2 into level 2, and then the rest of it we've put into level 3, except for 5.5.1, which we've put into level 4. But please, if you want to change anything, please put your hand up. If you want to, I see there is one hand up. Otherwise, put comments into the chat if you want to say anything. And as Gretel says, please put, if you want to change a level in a question, please put which question it is in 5.2 down to 5.5.1. Yes. I see there's a hand. Cheryl.
A comment, ma'am, on 5.2.
Sorry, we've got 2 people speaking. Okay. Sorry, I think the gentleman came in first. If you can ask first, and then we'll get to Cheryl.
5.2, ma'am, a comment.
Yes.
Normally, at marking, that question is testing knowledge of reduction formula. So the learner will be penalized for not putting all those negatives. They will definitely lose the marks.
Yeah,
That's how it has always been.
Yeah,
Because
at school I would
it's testing their understanding of reduction formula before they can simplify. Thank you.
Agreed. At school, I would definitely have taken them all off. I think maybe in a final it's a little harsh, but maybe I'm getting soft in my old age. I don't know. Maybe. Cheryl, your comment.
My comment is about 5.4.2. It says hence determine. There's no hence or otherwise. So if they don't use what they did in 5.4.1, are they going to give credit for their own method because they didn't hence it?
Interesting comment. We will definitely put it there. The science squared 45 is very easy to get. The science squared 15, they're going to have to do a fair bit of work with it. But we will definitely put a comment so that they can decide at the memo meeting if they're going to let them do another method, even though they did say hence only. Thanks for that. Okay, 552 should be level 4. Okay, 552 confused me. Level 4. Okay, fine. Oh, we've got so many different things going on here.
Yeah, okay, I don't know if we want to maybe do a vote for 5.5.2.
Yeah, okay, but it seems like 551 is also coming up as well. Okay, can I ask, please, question number 5.5.1. Okay, 551. If you want it in level 3, please put your hand up. Okay, I'm still getting hands going up. Okay, that seems just to have stopped. Okay, if you can put hands down, please. Just wait for them, for the numbers to drop. There's still lots of hands up. Okay, that's brilliant. Loads went down there. Okay, can I ask in 551, if you think it should stay where we've got it on level 4, please put your hands up. Your word's tight. Okay, I don't know. It's about equal. They both went up to the same number. Okay, they both went up to the same number. All right, we'll try and decide which one we're going to do there. Okay, and then 552, if I can ask. So if those hands can all go down, please. Question 5.5.2. If you think it should stay where we've got it on level 3, please put your hand up. Much quicker in a face-to-face meeting than it is like this. You've got to be fast on these hands. Okay, hands down. They're not coming down yet. Slowly coming down. Okay, brilliant. If you think 552 should be level 4, please put your hand up. Okay, it's gone way higher. Okay, so that changes to level 4, 552. Okay, awesome, hands down. And yeah, as I said before, all of these other comments about 1 mark too few, etc., I will pick those up. Last question can be answered by drawing a sign graph as well. Yes. Yeah. And we'll make sure that that goes in as well. Okay. So that's question 5. Let us move on to question 6. Right. Let me get to the start. Okay, the trig graph, 6.1 I thought was easy, 6.2 I thought was easy, both 6.2s. 6.3 I thought was fairly straightforward. 6.4, here's another one where, just like in paper 1, there was a shift. And if they didn't realize that if it's x plus 5, it shifts to the left, then they wouldn't have been able to have done it in paper 1 or paper 2. And I think it is a little worrying that there it would be nice to know that somebody were checking both paper 1 and paper 2 and making sure that the same things were not, a child who can't do one in one paper is not going to be penalized in the next one. So, and then 6.5, we've got 2 ways of doing it. One way is by relating it to the graph. It didn't say anything about relating it to the graph. It just said determine the values of P. So one way of doing it is to get it into G of X, and you get the G of X is 4P. Then you've got to realize that they've got to be exactly 2 real roots. Well, I'm going from minus 180 to 180. Where will there be 2 real roots? Only at the turning points. In other words, 4P must be either at the top at 2 or at the bottom at minus 2, and you get what P is. The alternative, because they didn't say anything about the graph, is you can just work with it and get to sine 2x equals 2p. And you can think of the graph of y equals sine 2x. And where will the graph of y equals sine 2x have 2 real roots in the interval minus 180 to 180? It's again at the turning points. In other words, at 1 or minus 1, and you get exactly the same answer. So either way, perfectly acceptable. They didn't tell you which way they wanted you to do it. So I think either way is absolutely fine. In terms of the levels, and again, level 1, level 2, I'm not worrying about. We had 6.1 as level 1, 6.2.1 we had as level 2, 6.2.2 we had as level 1, 6.3 we had as level 2, 6.4 we had at level 3, just because it's doing a sideways shift, and I think they do find it difficult. And then 6.5 we put at level 4, because I certainly don't remember having seen something exactly like this, and I think there was some thinking that had to be done with it. And that was one of the questions that once I'd done the paper, I sort of said, by the way, what answers did you get for this one? Because I'm just I'm not 100% sure. I think I'm right, but I'm not 100% sure. So if you want to make any comments, please either turn on your mic or just pop something in the chat. But I am aware of the time. Yes.
Yes, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. In 6.2.2,
yes,
it's 1 mark, and I couldn't figure out how would it be a 1 mark, because I had to do some calculations, because the graph there doesn't have a grid that I can read off the values that I can get a 1 mark. So I'm not sure if there is a way of just getting that point without doing calculations. I'm not sure if I'm missing something.
Okay, I think the way they want you to do it is because the graph from minus to 180 degrees to naught is exactly the same as the graph from naught to 180 degrees. It's the same curve, which means that point A is going to be translated the period of that graph. So point A is going to be 180 degrees away from point B. Because the two graphs, it's the corresponding point on the wave to the left. And so that for me is the quickest way of doing it, is saying that at A it's 60 degrees. If I go 180 degrees to the left, I get minus 120 degrees, and the Y values are the same. So that's the way I think they wanted the learners to do it. And 1 mark will be for the minus 120 on condition that the root 3 is the same. Does that help?
Yes, it did, madam. Thank you very much.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, go for it.
All right. No, what I did on this question now, if you look at point A and the asymptote of F, now the distance between point A and the asymptote is 30, and it should be the same distance as the negative asymptote with the point B. So that will be 30 degrees. But if you go to the left, it should be negative 30. That's how I did it.
Absolutely perfect. Exactly the same. It's basically working on symmetry. That's all it is. The two graphs are exactly the same, so the distances must be exactly the same. So that's perfect. Yeah. And I think possibly 2 marks. I see their comments there. Maybe it should be 2 marks. Maybe 1 for the minus 120, 1 for the root 3. But
may I comment, ma'am?
Yeah. Yes, go for it.
Yeah, question 6. I'm worried about not putting coordinates on the y-axis. Doesn't it disadvantage our slowest of learners?
It might be, but it might be they wanted them to realize that, because is in question 6.5. So that's the only case where they need any y value is in 6.5. And I think 6.5 is definitely a level 4 question. So it might be that they wanted them to look at that because you need the amplitude of the graph at all. No, you do. I lie. 6.3, you do need the amplitude of the graph. And it might be that that's why they didn't put anything on the y-axis because they wanted them to take it from the equation at the top. So it might be they wanted them to get it from the equation and therefore realize what's happening with 2g of x. So you did need it in 6.3. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, noted. Thank you. Okay, if we can move on to question 7. 7.1, I thought was quite straightforward. 7.2, I didn't think was a bad question. I did think there was a fair amount of work. The space in the answer book was absolutely inadequate for me, particularly because with fractions, I don't like putting a fraction on one line in that answer book because the line spacing itself is not very big. And I needed the whole of 7.2 and 7.3 to write this answer, so I had to put 7.3 at the back. So I think the space was a problem with it, but I didn't think it was very complicated. We've seen questions like that before. And then 7.3, substitution. But there was a fair amount of substitution that had to be done, and then the use of the area rule. So there was quite a bit of work with it. Somebody says they can't see the answers for question 7. They seem to be on the screen here. Okay, if anyone else can't see the answers for question 7, please just pop a comment in the chat, because I think they are there. If I look at the levels that we've got it as, and please disagree if you want to. We said 7.1 was level 2, and 7.2 and 7.3 were both level 3. I think we put 7.3 at level 3, even though it's just substitution. It's substitution and then it's having to use the area rule. So, yeah, I don't know. But any comments? Either talk or make a comment in the chat, please.
Can I come in, Susan?
Yes, perfect. Please do.
Yes, I think what we need to do as colleagues, ma'am, is that we need to go back to the traditional way of finding these special triangles. You remember the 1/√2 that you just showed now. Now, we used to teach our kids using the calculator because the calculator is going to rationalize. Yeah. So I think many learners miss that part where the root is underneath the fraction. So I think we need to teach our learners the special triangles. Thanks, man.
Interesting. Yeah. And I see there's a comment as well from Katerina to say that using a calculator for the special angles is a disadvantage here, because then you would have got root 2/2, and then you would have had a problem as how are you going to get this root 2 at the bottom? So yes, I think we do, and we all know our learners very well. When a question says without using a calculator and their special angles, we know exactly that they use a calculator. So yeah, point taken. I think we do need to do it. Okay, sorry, I'm very aware of time and I do want to get on to a discussion of question 5. So we now come to the geometry. If we have a look at question 8.1, I thought that started beautifully. I thought question 8.1 was lovely. It was straightforward. It tested 3 things of a circle. And I think for me, I would actually have quite liked there to have been a few more angles, because I think it was a very, very nice start to Euclidean geometry. We then came to 8.2. And what I find very interesting is last year, there was a question which I know I really battled with, and I had to get Jenny to help me with it. And I did eventually get it a really, really long way because I'd missed the midpoint theorem. So I think it was very interesting that last year they tested the midpoint theorem. You could have done it other ways, as you could here. And this year, again, to me, there's blatant midpoint theorem, because your quickest way of doing it is using the midpoint theorem. If you don't use the midpoint theorem, you can say converse of proportion theorem, because AD over DB is the same as AE over EG. You could also use similarity and get the triangle ADE is similar to triangle ABG and get that the ratio is 1:2 and do all sorts of things with that. So there are many other ways of doing question 8.2, but I think your quickest way is the midpoint theorem. And this is now 2 years in a row. So I think we must make certain that we revise midpoint theorem with our learners. If we look at cognitive levels for question 8, we put the first 3 on level 2. We put 8.2.1 as level 1 because it's just a reason. And then we've put 8.2.2, we put it as level 3. I don't know if you want to make a comment about whether that is level 3 or whether you want to, whether you think it should be level 2. So any comments, feel free to come off your mic or to put a comment in the chat. Otherwise, if nothing, I'm happy to move on to question 9. Okay.
Can I have a quick comment, Madam, again?
Yes, please do.
My comment now is going to be in the mark allocation here in Euclid. So I'm kind of not so sure because I'm kind of battling between if you are giving the answer and the reason. There's a mark for the solution, the answer, and the mark for the reason, which I feel there's inconsistency in that. Sometimes there will be an answer and a reason, and it's 1 mark. Sometimes it would be a mark for an answer, a mark for a reason. So I'm some kind of battling between the two. If we can look at it at 8.1.1, there's 2 marks. Obviously, it's for the answer and the reason. In 8.1.2 is 2 marks again, but there you still have to establish that angle M is 90 degrees and you justify it. That is 2 marks already. So I think 8.1.2, if we're consistent, it should be 4 marks, 3 marks at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. They probably are going to give 1 mark. Well, they will give 1 mark for the 26 because that's the answer. And they're probably going to give 1 mark for the angle in the semicircle. And if the child doesn't state the 90 degrees, I think they're going to take it that the child obviously has got the 26 from taking 90 minus 64. But I agree with you. It is difficult. Where do you give 1 mark statement, 1 mark reason? Where do you give 1 mark for both statement and reason? And I know I was never consistent with it because sometimes you don't want to give loads of marks. But I think in the easier questions, they tend to give 1 mark for the statement, 1 mark for the reason. 8.1.2, maybe it should have been 3 marks. I don't know, but we will certainly make a comment of that. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to question 9. 9.1, no problem. It was just a proof.
Another comment on 8.1 then.
Yes, on which question?
8.1.2.
Yes.
There is still an alternative of getting O1 first before getting M1, which also is angles on a straight line, getting O1 and the reason, and then 2 different reasons.
Very cool, because you can get angle O2 using angles at center, then you can get angle O1 using angles on a straight line, then you can get angle M1, which means that angle O1 has already been answered in 8.1.2. Thank you very much for that.
I agree with the previous speaker. The marks allocation base is a little bit stingy.
Yeah, but I think if you do it that way, that's a much longer way. So they're not going to give you marks for doing it the longer way. However, we do need to, when they mark it, they do need to be aware that the candidate can find angle O1 first, which is not a problem. And then in 8.1.3, they can just say, see above, because there's no cyclical reasoning. You can get angle O1 first. So thank you very much for that. Okay, question 9.2.1. I personally thought the diagram was really squashed. I thought this triangle BTO was quite small. And I'm sure I didn't have a chance to redraw it, but I'm sure if you swing S around a little bit and swing B around a little bit, then the triangle will look a whole lot better. But it wasn't too bad. It used tan perpendicular to radius. It used line from center to midpoint of chord. And then the 2 angles are equal. Therefore, it's cyclic because of angles in the same segment. And then 9.2.2, let me just make this a little bit smaller.
Is it coming, Ms. Scoletti?
Yes.
I agree with you. The diagram is very cluttered up, but some of the learners could not see it easily because of the line BT so close to BO and TO. On the sketch that you have on the laptop now, it looks much better than the actual one in the paper. I'm referring to question 9.2.1 now to prove the cyclic quad. It's not easy to see it so easily.
Sorry, you mentioned an L. I don't have an L in my
9.2.1.
Yeah.
Yeah. To prove it's a cyclic quad.
Yes.
Sorry? Yeah, what I'm saying, the diagram looks 9.2.1. The diagram looks it's very cluttered up, close to one another. To find this angle, to see the angle in the same segment, T and angle O, wasn't easy to see. This is so close up.
Correct. I think the diagram is not a nice diagram to give them at all, and I'm sure one could draw one could draw a much nicer diagram. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. And then 9.2.2, because you've got the cyclic quad, you can get angles in same segment equal, and then you've got corresponding angles to get angle S. So there was question 9.2. If we look at our levels, we've put 9.1 in level 2, because it's a theorem and the cognitive levels say that theorems are that. And then 9.2, we put both of them in level 3. If you think that's wrong, please put a comment into the chat. And so put a comment into the chat or just come off your mic if you think our levels are not right.
Make it easy for you when you write Matric. Take all these comments into account.
Sorry, what was that? Okay, if we can move to question number... Yes.
A comment.
Yes.
I flagged the 9.2 as an unfair question because of the diagram. I thought, in fact, maybe as a question that disadvantages the learner. I thought of a student who's got poor eyesight, and they have to identify angles subtended by the same arc for 9.2.2. I struggled myself. Now, what about the learner? What about the learner who's got poor eyesight?
And also, what about the learner who doesn't write very neatly? Because they're going to be putting markings in this triangle, and their right angles are going to be in places going to wrong lines that are not right angles. And so thank you for that. We will definitely make a comment on that. Okay, are you happy with levels? Does the diagram mean it goes into a higher level or not necessarily? Okay, no comments coming in, so we'll leave it at that. Okay, if we look now at question 10, what we've got there is they gave you that angle R2 and angle P1 were equal. You end up using tan chord theorem. You have to then use exterior angle of triangles, exterior angle of a cyclic quad. There are many ways of doing this. I personally just like X's and Y's, but you can certainly be doing things like saying angle whatever is equal to this one plus this one and then equating them and so on. So I thought 10.1 wasn't bad. 10.2, they did not give you which triangles you had to prove similar. However, from the ratios, it was fairly easy to see. And to prove the two triangles similar was not very difficult either. You did have to do a little bit of working to get the second angle, but angle A was common, so that was fine. And the ratio dropped out very easily from the similar triangles. And then 10.3, you had to just be careful with that one because you used the similar triangles again with the ratio that you hadn't used, and you had to use, let me just make this, whoops, that's way too small. Okay, I'm trying to just make it a little bit, I'm not being very successful with this. Okay, hopefully you can still see it. So what you had to do was you then had to realize that they're parallel lines and use ratio and proportion in triangle RAC. And you got another ratio coming in. Both of those you could cross multiply, realize that one of the sides was exactly the same, and so you got that last answer to drop out. So there was question 10.
Can I try to enlarge it again? Can I try to enlarge it again, because it's very small now?
I can. Okay, which part do you want? Which one do you want to see? Because I can't get the whole of question 10 at once.
Can you try Control P?
Okay? No, it's fine. Which question do you want to see enlarged?
10.2 and 10.3.
Sorry, Control scroll.
Yeah, there we go.
It's just I'm working on a different laptop. That's the problem.
No, not you. I think the candidate is sorted.
Okay, there we go. I think you've got 10.2, 10.3 and the diagram on one page. We will share these memos with you, but we didn't want to do it yet because we worried that there might be things that we've missed out on. And please, if you noticed any mistakes in the memo, please point them out gently, and I will beat myself badly, and we will fix them before we send them out to you. So if you've seen any errors, please let us know, and we will fix them, and we will let you have these. Okay, if we look at cognitive levels for question 10, we thought that 10.1 and 10.2 were both level 3, and we thought that 10.3 was level 4. If you disagree, please put a comment in the chat, or please come off your mic and let me know. Otherwise, if you agree, I would like to just make a couple of general comments, and then I do want to spend a little bit of time on question 5.1. Okay, just other comments I've got here. We thought possibly the order of the geometry could have been changed to put question 8.2 after question 9. Maybe there should have been more simple questions asked in 8.2. We also noticed that 16 of the 40 marks would have been on grade 12 geometry. And I think one thing we need to realize next year, there are only 8 teaching days on Euclidean geometry according to the ATPs. It's allocated 2 weeks, but in those 2 weeks, I think 2 of the days are either public holidays or school holidays or something. So I think we've got to be quite careful next year about geometry, because nearly half the geometry was on grade 12 stuff. And if we're only going to be teaching it in 8 days, I think that could be a problem. And then also, as far as the answer book is concerned, in many questions, there was not much space given. So I think they do need to be aware of that. I think we do moan about that every year. And I think it's imperative that whenever you do exams with your grade 12s, that you always give them answer books so that they learn how to write in an answer book and how to use the extra space if they need it, particularly the child who makes lots of mistakes, particularly the child who writes very big. So they need to learn how to use that answer book. Okay, I'm very pleased that we still have time. What I want to do with question 5.1, I do not want to discuss the impact of the mistake, because we know it will be huge and the department knows it will be huge. But rather I want to concentrate on what advice we would like to give to compensate for it. The options I can see are adding 7 marks to every candidate, or marking the paper out of 143. If the paper is marked out of 143, do we want paper 2 to be scaled up to 150, or do we want the total for both papers to be scaled from 293 to 300? So I think we need to think of that. I want to show you the cognitive levels. If you look up here, as I said, the paper is out of 143 because we've taken that out. The levels, there was one question where we weren't in agreement, where it was exactly the same. So there was possibly one question which could have moved either way. Bottom line is 42% of the paper we've got in level 1 and 2. That's supposed to be 55%, which worries me, because it means that your child who is trying to pass, I think, could struggle with this paper. And I think that one question where we weren't sure to put a level 3 or level 4 it's not going to change this at all. So I'm opening it up to the chat. I'm opening it up to the floor. Please, it's now open mic for anybody. Please be aware that, if someone starts talking, so we're going to have to try and work out how we can handle this. But any comments on how we do question 5.1? Okay, what about the option of marking it and allowing for positive and negative answers? There is an option, but what happens to the child who left it out completely because they didn't know how to do it because there was an error? So that's my concern there. This was a relatively difficult paper. Question 2 would have been an easier question, absolutely. So I prefer the option given 7 marks than to mark it out of 143. So that's one way of doing it. I would recommend, if we are going to give them 7 marks, that it's not up to the marker to give 7 marks, because as they get more tired, they're going to forget to add the 7 marks there. So if we are going to give them 7 marks, I would recommend that the papers, that those questions are just striped through and the paper's marked out of 143. And once the marks have been captured, then they add 7 marks to everybody, if that is what we're suggesting. Our learners depend on this paper to pass. Brian, yep. Give them all 7 marks, or all 7 marks. Yes, go for it.
Daniel, yes. I think what you just suggested now is the most practical one, because if you just remove those 7 marks from the total and mark that paper of 193, and then after the entire paper is marked, you add 7 marks to each learner's score. That will be much more reasonable to do.
That seems to be, in fact, what everybody is saying, is just add 7 marks to everybody. But I would suggest it's done not in the exam venue, in the marking venues. I would suggest it's done once they've captured the marks. I would do that. Yeah, and then
that will mean that irrespective of whether they answer the question or not, they will get that benefit.
Yes. And then having done that, I'm convinced that, they definitely will put it on the curve to check and see how the results compare to previous years. And I think they definitely, there will be an adjustment if necessary. It seems as if everybody is in agreement with adding 7 marks. Okay, so let's leave that. And now open the floor to any comments about anything on the paper, the answer book, the language, the accessibility, anything you want to say. Go for it.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, go for it.
Maybe I think the most logical thing with 5.1 would be to totally take out the 7 marks and calculate the total out of 143, and then convert, instead of just adding marks, convert to 150. Then the adjustment is some other body's responsibility. The adjustment is not necessarily based on a question that had a problem. It's just